Over the last few months, JBL has put out their Partybox 310 and their Partybox 110, and both of these box speakers are great. They sound and look amazing. But then out of nowhere, JBL announced their Partybox 710, and this thing is simply overkill for personal use. But if you're thinking about picking up the Partybox 710, then this is the video for you. Regarding pricing, the Partybox 110 retails for $800, and for comparison's sake, the Partybox 310 now retails for $550, and the Partybox 110 now retails for $400. Thanks, inflation. Nonetheless, like I mentioned earlier, the Partybox 710 is going to be overkill, and if you're looking for a large box speaker, the Partybox 310 will surely get the job done. But regardless, if you want to pick the 710 up, it'll be linked down below. And if you want to further support the channel, check out the merch shelf down below. I've made some shirts and hoodies that look and feel great. And if you've been watching me for a while, you know I can be very particular. So I'll only set my name on something that I'm really proud of. Now first, let's talk about the design of the speaker. The 710 looks like all of your other party boxes, except bigger. This thing even dwarfs the Partybox 310. We've got a mostly plastic body, which can be a scratch magnet if you plan on moving the speaker around from place to place, and we've got a metal grille on the front. Now, just like the 310, the 710 also has built-in wheels, and these wheels are a little larger too. So you can roll this speaker around, which can be a big help. However, unlike the 310, the 710 doesn't have a built-in telescopic handle. It's fixed, so rolling the speaker around is a little more awkward than the 310. Now, even though it's great and all that the 710 has built-in wheels, sometimes you will have to carry this behemoth around, and just be warned that this big boy weighs in at 62 pounds. And for comparison's sake, the 310 weighs in at 38.5 pounds and the 110 weighs in at 23 pounds. However, when it comes to overall durability, the 710 is rocking an IPX4 rating, meaning that the speaker is splash proof. So if this speaker were to get splashed on by a cannonball next to the pool, or if a drink gets spilled on it, or if you leave it out overnight and it gets rained on, this speaker should be perfectly fine, just as long as the compartments on the back are sealed. However, I do gotta point out that the 710 doesn't have a speaker stand mount on the bottom, like the 310 or 110, so you're not gonna be able to raise the speaker up as easily. But now let's talk about the light feature on the speaker, because in general, JBL has some very impressive looking light features. Now, for starters, you can control this light feature from JBL's Partybox app, and this light feature is an upgraded version of the light feature found on the 110. As in, the light features that surround the woofers are conjoined, unlike the light features on the 310, which are separated. But the 710 also has additional color LEDs embedded into its face, which does give it like a star effect, and there's also these colored LED strips on either side, which just aren't found on these other party boxes. Overall, the light feature on the 710 looks amazing, but personally, I really wish the tweeters also had light rings around them. I don't know, I just really like the look of the illuminated tweeters found on the 110. But now let's talk about tech specs. When the Partybox 710 was first announced, I assumed that it had a built-in battery, just given JBL's past naming structure. Partyboxes that start with an odd number, like the Partybox 100, 110, 300, and 310, all have built-in batteries, whereas Partyboxes that start with an even number, like the Partybox 200 and Partybox 1000, don't have built-in batteries. But unfortunately, the 710 breaks this naming structure because it doesn't have a built-in battery. You can only use it while it's plugged in. And if you do plan on getting this speaker, then you might want to get an extension cord because this power cable isn't the longest. It's only a 6.6 foot long cable. However, everything about the 710 is pretty much the same as the 310 and 110. The 710 has two 1/4-inch inputs so that you can plug in a pair of microphones if you want to do karaoke, which I'm sure your neighbor is just going to be so happy about. I know I am, especially since they have an amazing singing voice. And if you want, you can always mess around with the bass, the treble, and the echo of your microphone. However, just keep in mind the echo, treble, and bass will only take into effect onto the microphone itself. These EQ settings will not actually change the sound of your music. And then up top, there's also some DJ effect buttons. Now, personally, I would never really use these buttons, but they're there and you can always customize them through JBL's Partybox app. Now, continuing on the topic of ports, the 710 also has a USB-A port, which you can either use it to plug in a USB stick and play music off of it, or you can plug in your own devices and charge them up. Now, personally, I think it's great and all that the 710 has a USB-A port, but I still really wish that the speaker had a USB-C port so that you can either use it as a wired connection and or use it to charge your own devices, because most phones these days now come included with USB-C cables instead. However, this speaker does have your standard 3.5mm audio jack, so you can always just use it with a wired connection, and there's also an audio in and audio out jack. So if you've got a spare speaker lying around, regardless of size or brand, you can always daisy chain it up to the 710 and get them to play in sync. But unfortunately, these are all the ports found on the 710, and personally I do wish that this speaker did have more ports to it, because there is a lot of horsepower here that just isn't going unused. I really wish that this speaker maybe had a pair of XLR inputs so that your guy that likes to moonlight as a DJ could take better advantage of it. But when it comes to Bluetooth connectivity, the speaker is using Bluetooth 5.1, but more importantly, it can be connected to two devices at the same time. So you can easily hot swap from one device to another, which is great if you're a power user, or this way you and a friend can both be DJ. And when it comes to performance, the speaker does have zero latency across the board when watching movies or videos on your phone, whether you're using an iPhone or an Android device. And when it comes to audio codecs, you've got SBC and AAC. But now let's talk about listening to music with this speaker. The Partybox 710 has your pretty standard speaker setup for any Partybox. You've got a pair of frontward firing woofers, you've got a pair of frontward firing tweeters, and you've got an exhaust port that shoots out the back. And when it comes to output, JBL promises 800 watts out of this guy. And like most other Partyboxes, the 710 has a bass boost button to it, and you've got two levels to choose from. Now personally, I really like using bass boost level 1 on both the 310 and 110 at all times, but I actually found that with the 710, if you're going to use it indoors, just use it with this bass boost turned off, because if not, the bass can overpower the mids and highs, or even worse, the bass on the 710 will shift your furniture around. And in general, I highly recommend that you only pick up the 710 if you plan on mostly using it outdoors. But nonetheless, we're going to jump into the sound test. The 710 is playing at 38% volume because I don't want to get a visit from the cops, and we're going to be cycling between all of the bass boost levels. So sound signature wise, the 710 has your standard Partybox sound signature of strong mids and highs so that vocals are well defined and the bass comes in when it has to. Now regarding the bass boost feature, like I mentioned earlier, if you're going to use this speaker indoors, I think it sounds perfectly fine with bass boost turned off. And trust me, there is more than enough bass. However, if you turn bass boost on, you're going to notice that the 710 really only increases the physicality in your bass. The mids and highs stay relatively untouched. Overall, when you turn on the bass boost on this speaker, you're really turning on your earthquake machine because the physicality you get out of this speaker is truly insane. And when it comes to max volume, this thing gets disgustingly loud. Personally, I feel that for indoor use, 25 to 38% volume is going to be more than enough. And for outdoor use, I don't think you're going to need to go past 60% volume. Any higher and you're most likely going to get a visit from the cops. Personally, I feel that this speaker is overkill for personal use and especially for indoor use. But now let's talk about pairing this speaker up with other speakers. If you've got a Partybox 710, you can wirelessly pair it up to one other Partybox 310 or to a Partybox 110 and get them to play in sync. Or if you've got two Partybox 710s, you can either wirelessly pair them up and get them to play in sync, or you can get them to play in left and right stereo mode. However, it is very important to keep in mind that the Partybox 710 will not wirelessly sync up to any of JBL's older Partyboxes, like either a Partybox 300 or a Partybox 100, and you can only have a total of two Partyboxes wirelessly paired up together. If you want to have more Partyboxes paired up together, like I did in my B-roll, you're going to have to daisy chain them up. And you also got to keep in mind that you cannot wirelessly pair up a Partybox 710 up to any of JBL's smaller Party Boost speakers. So if you've got a JBL Boombox 2, JBL Extreme 3, JBL Flip 5, Charge 5, or a JBL Pulse 4, they will not wirelessly sync up with the Partybox 710. Now, overall, JBL does speaker pairing protocols very well, and the Partyboxes do a very good job of connecting to each other very quickly, and they do a really good job of maintaining a stable connection. But Partybox's TWS is way more limited compared to JBL's Party Boost. You can only have a total of two speakers paired together wirelessly, and you don't have as many speakers to choose from. Personally, I really just wish JBL would just bring Party Boost to their Partyboxes. But at least Partyboxes do have those audio out jacks, so you can always daisy chain speakers together, so there's always that. But I will admit, it's just not as convenient as just being able to wirelessly sync up, let's say, 5 Partyboxes together. But with all that being said, the JBL Partybox 710 is simply just overkill either for personal use or for indoor use. But nonetheless, the 710 really does deliver on its promises. The speaker sounds good and stays clear even at those higher volumes, which realistically I doubt most people will ever get to use. And the light feature really is impressive. The only area that I feel this speaker needs improving is its port setup. There's a lot of horsepower here that's going unused, and I really wish you could hook up more things to this speaker, especially if you like to moonlight as a DJ. And I also really wish that JBL would just bring Party Boost to their Partybox speakers. If you made it this far, I guess you enjoyed the video, so hit the like button and get subscribed. If you want to pick any of the products up, they'll be linked down below. And if you want to further support the channel, check out the merch. I made some shirts and hoodies that look and feel great. And you know, I can be very particular, so I'll only slap my name on something that I'm really proud of.